I had never believed in the supernatural. Not really. Sure, there were the ghost stories, the creepy campfire tales, but those were all part of fun. When Jenna suggested the weekend getaway to the Mirror House, I saw it as an opportunity to escape the grind of daily life and embrace something new. A few of us were eager for the adventure, but we all thought it would be one of those weekends where we joke around about the house being spooky, laugh it off, and then leave with a handful of fun stories to tell. Little did I know, I was stepping into something I couldn't begin to comprehend. The first night passed without incident. We had arrived just before sunset, our luggage in hand, excited to explore this old mansion nestled high up in the Colorado mountains. The house was exactly what I had hoped for: creaky wooden floors, high ceilings, and walls covered in mirrors that glistened in the fading light. The owner, a reclusive artist named Elias, had designed the space as a sanctuary for his work. He was obsessed with reflection, something that became obvious once we saw the countless mirrors lining the halls and rooms. It was unsettling at first, but we were all eager to have a laugh at how weird it looked. We joked about the house's quirks and then settled in for the night. The second night, though, was different. Jenna and I were in the main bedroom, unpacking our things. The room was as surreal as the rest of the house, with mirrors covering nearly every inch of wall. I found it hard to focus on unpacking, my attention constantly drawn to my reflection. It wasn't that the mirrors were particularly striking. Rather, it felt like they were watching me, following me with every movement. At one point, as I reached for a bag on the floor, I caught sight of someone behind me in the mirror. I froze. I turned, expecting to see one of my friends standing there, but the room was empty. My heart skipped a beat, and I laughed nervously, chalking it up to shadows or an optical illusion. But then it happened again. I turned back to the mirror, and there it was, someone standing behind me. I spun around quickly, this time certain I would see someone there. Nothing, just the empty room, and me standing alone in it. I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping unease that was slowly creeping up on me. Jenna, who had been rummaging through the closet, called out to me, snapping me from my thoughts. "You all right?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, though I wasn't. I didn't want to admit it, but I was starting to feel the house was alive, somehow. Not in a normal, old house way, but in a way that felt wrong, as if it was watching us. Later, we all gathered in the living room, laughing and drinking, trying to shake off the strange feeling I couldn't quite pinpoint. It was cold outside, the wind howling to the trees, but the house was warm enough. It wasn't until we heard the whispers that the atmosphere began to shift. At first, it was just a soft sound, like the wind rustling through the trees outside. But as we sat there, the whispers grew louder, becoming more distinct. They seemed to be coming from the mirrors. We all exchanged confused glances, brushing it off as the wind playing tricks on our minds. But then, the whispers turned into words. Words that didn't make sense. Words that seemed to come from everywhere at once. A chill ran down my spine. I glanced at Jenna, who was staring at one of the mirrors with wide eyes. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Before I could respond, something caught my attention, a movement in the glass. I wasn't looking at my reflection anymore, not really. I had shifted my gaze to the mirror in the corner, and that's when I saw it. A smile. Not mine, but the reflection in the glass was smiling, its lips curling upward in a twisted, mocking grin. My heart slammed in my chest as I stood frozen, my mind racing. "Jenna?" I whispered, my voice shaky. "It's not me." Jenna turned to look at the mirror, and her eyes widened in terror. "What is happening?" she whispered, almost to herself. Suddenly, we heard Marco scream from the hallway. We rushed out, all of us, to find him standing in front of one of the doors, trying to turn the handle. The door didn't open, and Marco's face was pale with fear. He kept tugging the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Then, the door began to melt. The wood warped, and glass began to pour out from the cracks. It was as if the door itself was being devoured, reshaped by the mirrors. The shards of glass shot out like shards of ice, slicing into Marco's skin. He staggered back, blood pouring from his arms and legs as he struggled to get away. The mirrors in the hallway seemed to hum with life, growing darker and more menacing by the second. "We need to leave," someone screamed. Panic spread like wildfire. We rushed to the front door, only to find it slamming shut in our faces with a deafening bang. No matter how hard we pushed, it wouldn't open. We were trapped. It was then that I saw it. A figure emerging from the mirrors. It wasn't one of us. And it wasn't just a reflection. It was the artist, Elias. His ghostly form stepped out of the glass, a twisted expression on his face as he reached for me. I froze, unable to move as his cold, translucent hand grabbed my wrist. It felt like ice, but there was something worse about it, something suffocating. His eyes locked with mine, and I realized, with growing horror, that he wasn't just a ghost. He was trapped in the mirrors, just like we would be. Jenna screamed, trying to pull me away, but the more she struggled, the tighter the grip on my arm became. With a sudden, violent pull, Elias dragged me toward the nearest mirror. I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the glass, my throat tight with terror. As I was pulled into the cold, reflective surface, I reached for my friends, but they were all helpless, their faces twisted in panic. One by one, they were sucked into the mirrors, their screams echoing in the glass, becoming distorted and garbled. Marco was next, his body slamming into the mirror as the glass seemed to break around him. But it wasn't breaking, it was swallowing him whole. And then, just as quickly, silence. The mirrors returned to their glassy, pristine state, reflecting only empty rooms. The house was still, as if nothing had ever happened. Weeks later, a new group of renters arrived at the Mirror House. They were unaware of the horrors that had transpired there, unaware of the terrible curse that lingered. As they explored the rooms, they would find nothing but eerie, silent reflections that would never reveal what truly happened. They would never know that Jenna, Marco, and the rest of us were trapped inside the glass, our faces frozen in fear, forever part of the Mirror House. And as I stare into the mirror now, I realize it's only a matter of time before someone else comes. Someone else to join us in this endless reflection. Someone else to be pulled into the house's cold embrace. The house, it never forgets. In 2019, Emily and her best friend Sarah decided to spend the weekend at an abandoned manor deep in the woods of upstate New York. The manor had been uninhabited for decades, a relic of forgotten time, and was rumored to be haunted. Still, the idea of spending a weekend in such a place was far too tempting to resist. We found it on a little-known vacation rental site, and the price was too good to pass up. The host, an eccentric old man, promised us a unique experience, though his odd demeanor left us a little wary. But curiosity got the better of us, and we booked the place. We arrived on a Friday evening, the autumn wind howling through the trees, making the manor seem even more foreboding. It was huge, dilapidated but still grand in its own way. The house, full of antique furniture, looked like something from a Victorian ghost story, with its cracked windows and sagging floors. Despite its neglect, the house had an undeniable charm, and I found myself excited by the thought of staying in such a historic place. That first night, after a late dinner, Sarah and I decided to explore. The house was enormous, and it didn't take long for us to stumble across a forgotten bedroom tucked away on the second floor. There, resting against a far wall, stood a massive, ornate mirror. It was framed in gold, intricate design swirling around its edges, and it seemed almost out of place amidst the decay of the room. It was covered in dust, the glass reflecting only darkness, a void that seemed to stretch endlessly. Sarah, being her usual playful self, teased me about how it looked like a portal to another world. I laughed nervously, but something about the mirror unsettled me. I stared into it for a moment longer than I intended. A chill ran down my spine as I looked deeper into the reflection. I could see only shadows, but there was something oddly oppressive about it. My heart beat faster, and I quickly turned away, brushing it off as nothing more than a trick of the light. Later, after we had settled in the parlor with a bottle of wine, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching us. The mirror, still reflecting nothing but blackness in the corner of the room, seemed to draw my attention over and over again. As I gazed into it, something strange happened. A figure appeared in the reflection. It was tall, its features distorted and blurry, like an old photograph left in the sun too long. I turned quickly, expecting to see someone standing behind me, but there was nothing. No one was there. "What is it?" Sarah asked, noticing my sudden stillness. "Nothing," I replied, trying to sound calm, but my voice betrayed me. I thought I saw something in the mirror, probably just my imagination. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something about the figure in the reflection made my blood run cold, and it stayed with me, hovering in the back of my mind. Long after I had turned away, that night, after we had gone to bed, I woke up suddenly. A scratching sound echoed through the room, coming from the direction of the mirror. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, the old wood creaking, but then the sound came again, louder this time, like something or someone was clawing at the glass from the other side. My heart raced. I didn't dare look, but the sound persisted, relentless. I sat frozen in the bed, barely breathing, my eyes fixed on the dark shape of the mirror across the room. The scratching continued, and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. Finally, I mustered the courage to glance over, and there it was, a hand, pale and distorted, reaching out from the glass. It was grotesque, its fingers twisted and long, as if it was trying to break through the surface. My stomach churned, and I let out a strangled cry, waking Sarah in an instant. She shot up in bed, her eyes wide with panic. "Sarah, we need to get out of here," I whispered, grabbing her arm. We bolted into the hallway, not daring to look back. The air felt thick with dread, suffocating us. But when we returned in the morning, there was no sign of anything unusual. The mirror was just as it had been before, clean, undisturbed. The scratching noises, the hand. Had we imagined it all? But I knew we hadn't. Something was wrong with that mirror. The events of the previous night clung to me like a shadow, refusing to let go. Over the next couple of days, things only grew worse. Strange noises echoed throughout the manor, unsettling and unexplainable. At night, I would hear whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, and shadows would dance in the corners of my vision. I wasn't the only one to experience these oddities. Sarah had her own strange encounters. Footsteps that followed her, doors that creaked open by themselves, but it was a mirror that kept drawing me in. One evening, after we had heard a loud crash from upstairs, we went to investigate. The upstairs hallway was dark, and the silence was deafening. As we stepped into the forgotten bedroom again, we saw it. The figure in the mirror was no longer blurry. It was clear, unmistakably human, but twisted, its face warped into a grotesque mask of sorrow and rage. The thing was moving, its mouth opening and closing in a way that didn't seem possible. The words it whispered were garbled, incoherent, but the voice was unmistakably angry, filled with a hatred that sent chills straight to my bones. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, but the terror froze me in place. The figure's eyes locked with mine, and I could feel its gaze searing into my soul. "We need to leave," Sarah whispered urgently, tugging at my arm. But it was too late. The mirror shattered that night, and we didn't even hear it happen. We woke to find the glass on the floor, glittering in the pale moonlight. I was paralyzed with fear, but my instinct told me to check the mirror's frame. I reached behind it, trembling, and felt something cold and paper-thin. A letter, yellowed with age, the edges tattered. I unfolded it carefully, my hand shaking. The letter was dated 1923, and its contents were chilling. It spoke of a vengeful spirit bound to the mirror, a spirit that had been trapped for generations, waiting for someone to come close enough to release it. The letter warned that the spirit would haunt anyone who dared to stay in the manor, that they would be cursed, and that the spirit would follow them, never leaving, until it claimed their soul. My heart raced as I finished reading. I looked at Sarah, and her face was as pale as mine. We both knew we had to leave, but even as we packed our things, I could feel that presence lingering in the corners of the room, waiting. It was as though the very air had turned heavy with the spirit's anger. We fled the house in terror, running to the car and speeding away down the winding road. But the terror didn't stop there. As we drove, I glanced into the rearview mirror, and there it was, the figure, sitting in the back seat, its face hidden in shadow. It wasn't just in the mirror of the manor anymore. It was following us. We never returned to that house. But the curse didn't end with our departure. The spirit remained, showing itself in every reflective surface we encountered, windows, puddles, even the shine of a passing car's bumper. It's always there, lurking in the background, waiting. And no matter where I go, no matter how far I run, I can still feel its presence watching me, haunting me, never letting me go.